because Josh and Brian, they're both veterans, and I really want to get a veteran's perspective because somebody posted, I can't remember. See, this is the thing. I watch so much, so many. Yeah, this they were saying how many veterans there are, and that if they start setting it off with the military, because I agree with something that a lot of people have been starting to speculate about Joy and I know I mention Joy Reid a lot because I watch her show every day, and but she's not the only one. A lot of people are speculating that next year the reason for all these raids and the tanks and calling out the military is during the election next year and specifically in 2028 to get people used to, yeah. And so they want to get people used to and near to having military on the street. And so somebody was saying it was for this veterans group. They're like, there's 70, oh, I can't remember how many veterans they said, but there's a bunch of fucking veterans that way outnumber the number of enlisted in this country. And if it goes down, they're not fat slobby like these recruits that they are talking about. So that's why I've been desperate to get a veteran's perspective because I really want to know what y'all think. As veterans, I really want to know how y'all think, what do you think appropriate responses are right now to what's going on. Like I said, this is a clearly a fascist takeover of our government and a tyrannical government, a government run amok, and we have no obligation to obey a tyrannical government. Period. That is not our contract. And so, if we are to succeed, it's going to take the military, like in Egypt, being on our side, like in the Green Revolution. And so, I'm wondering, I really do want to know, what will they do? All my experiences with our military, and I've had a few, have been positive ones. I one time whenever I ran out of gas on my way to a job interview, and I had to turn up this hill, and I ran out of gas right there. It was middle of the day. It was rush hour. They're like, it was in California, so there were like four lanes going one way and four lanes going the other way. And I was at a stoplight and I couldn't start it. And everybody was behind me honking and going crazy. And I'm there by myself, like, I can't push this by myself if I wanted to. And all of a sudden, I felt my car moving. There was this dude on the driver's side. He was in his full military garb and he was just like, go ahead and put it in neutral. And he pushed my car over and out of the way. He was like, I know we're not supposed to do this in uniform, but I wanted to make sure you got out of the way and safely. And I'm like, that is so sweet. Thank you. And he got back in his car anyway. And then my first flight back, I drove out to California when I moved out there. And so when I came home for Christmas that year, that was the first time I'd ever flown before. And I was cool because once you've spent 3 days driving cross country, a flight that can get me home in 7 hours, I'm down with that. I'm going to take that. So I wasn't nervous about flying. But then when we took off, we flew out over the Pacific Ocean and then did a turnaround. And I like a window seat. So I was on the window on this side. And so it felt like I was on my side like this looking at the ocean. Felt like for 5 minutes. And so the dude beside me, I guess, noticed how much I was gripping the seat. Like I was getting the armrest, like, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. And then he grabbed my hand and he was like, I'm a Navy SEAL. You'll be fine. If anything happens, I'm going to take care of you. That's when I noticed one, he was in uniform. Didn't notice that. Two, he was fucking fine. It was a white dude, but he was fine. Dark set eyes, dark hair. Ooh, he was, I was like, hey, okay. Thank you, soldier. Right. I mean, thank you. And the inauguration, I think I started to say this last week, but we went to President Obama's first inauguration, and it was a bunch of people. It was filled. And when we got out of the train station, um, all of a sudden, man, there was like a corridor of soldiers with these giant guns, and they were just like pointing us in this direction. And it was like, holy shit, they were in full gear and scary. But it was like reassuring because I knew they were there to make sure nothing went down, that everybody was protected. They were there to protect us. And that made me feel comforted that, well, they're on our side. I mean, yeah, they look scary and bad as shit. And I'm like, fuck, this is what we look like when we're abroad. No wonder people hate our soldiers because they're scary. And but here domestically, they're not allowed to fire on us. They're literally here to protect us when they're, National Guard, our troops. And so, yeah, it was a comfort to be around. My dad's a veteran. I know lots of veterans, so, and soldiers. So it's like, I don't know. I always had a Americans generally have a high esteem of our soldiers, so the people who serve. And so this is something that they risk going along. When General Milley did that whole parade through Prospect Park with Donald Trump in his first administration, and they threw tear gas on peaceful protesters protesting, and General Milley went walking around in fatigues like he was walking through the streets of Baghdad with Trump. He was more disgusted than anybody. He's later that same day he was like, "I'm sorry for what I did. We're trained better than that." He trained his troops. He got on them and said, "We're gonna, learn better from this. I've let y'all down, and I'm sorry." He did a very strong and "I forgive you" mea culpa in front of Congress, and I appreciate that's the kind of integrity. That's how I view our military integrity, that they won't go there. That the same way that the Nazis turned their army into Gestapo, I think our soldiers are better trained than that. And they have better ethics and morals. Well, let me say, past tense, up until this past year. So I don't know. They're definitely Hexet that's trying to change the way things go. Yeah, and so we're going to need them. We're going to need them to stay righteous. We're going to need them, the veterans and the active duty soldiers. They are not supposed to um, respect an illegal order. They're supposed to say no. He's commander in chief, but he's not God. And if he gives them an illegal order, they should say no. They are not allowed to shoot American citizens, period. They're not allowed to operate on U.S. soil in a military capacity, period. Will they? Do they not know? Or he's replacing leadership? A bunch of our admirals and leaders resigned last week rather than to implement these because of those strikes, those missiles being flown into those boats in Venezuela. Again, we don't even know if they're cartel or what. What the fuck? They could be boats of people escaping who've been kidnapped and deported. I don't know. We don't know, right? But they are sure shit doing extrajudicious killings on behalf of America. So who are the soldiers that are conducting those strikes without the will of Congress? I don't know. I don't know. So I've been wanting for the last 2 weeks to get some veterans. We have two veterans in the Disruptors group. At least get y'all's perspective to see what y'all think about it. Because I think it would be a shame. It'd be a tragic. It would be a tragedy if they lost that kind of regard from the American people. We saw what happened during the Vietnam War. What happened when the citizens erroneously hated and lost faith, really, with the administration, but took it out on our soldiers and our veterans of the Vietnam War. And so I don't want that to happen. I don't want them to earn that kind of disrespect. But if they do coalescing and if they're complicit with Trump in all this, it's going to be an ugly bloodbath out here. But they're going to lose. those who are fighting with Trump and on the side of Trump, they're going to lose because there are far more of us, and that includes our military and our veterans, than there are of them. And there are more, I believe, that will not obey an illegal order. There are more that will not stand for the trampling of our Constitution when it comes to our military. I don't, even though most of them are, the majority of our soldiers have always been Republican, conservative. I think that there's like 40% who are black and brown, and I think, and women, and I think that they know better, and I hope they act that way. We'll see. I don't know. I don't know. Anything's possible. I've seen the part of the East Wing demolished today, so I don't know. There are people getting murdered in boats that without our say so, without our approval. There's a grifter in the White House stealing the money out of Fort Knox and out of our treasury. Like, it ain't that. Yeah, y'all owe me $230 million, he says. I don't know, the Department of Justice owes him. I don't know where he thinks the Department of Justice's money is. And if Congress isn't paying it out, who's giving him that money? Right? So, yeah, there's a lot of shit going on that shouldn't be going on. So, I don't know. I don't know. But I would like to be reassured. I'll tell you that much. I'd like to hear a couple of veterans say, we're not going to do that. I've served with people that wouldn't do that. I hope so. I hope so. I know there are a lot. I know there are a lot that aren't afraid and will not be afraid of a dictator or tyrant, that are offended by this piece of shit and called them losers. Said, why are they doing this? Not for money. And then what the hell's the point? They're dying for what? To protect your ass, you slob. Anyway, maybe next